Hello, everyone. Glenn Master, President and Chairman of the International Supply Chain Protection Organization. And this is podcast number 4 in our series. And we're going to be taking a little bit different avenue as it relates to cargo theft. Obviously, in 2024, we saw the largest increase in cargo theft exponentially, really over the last decade here in the United States. But the topic of this podcast really is going to be talking about how cargo theft is impacting businesses throughout the United States, but also more importantly, internationally. And we've got 2 guests, met both these gentlemen, had the opportunity at our ISCPO summits in both London and Toronto. Our guests are Mark Haywood, he's PL Regional Police, Greater Toronto, and Michael Dawber, Police Crime Intelligence Services from the UK. So I'd like to welcome them both to the podcast. How are you gentlemen doing?
Very good.
Good, thanks. Thanks for having us, Glenn.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, especially in 2024, the United States saw a massive increase in cargo theft, and more specifically around the range of what we call strategic theft, which historically has been known as fictitious pickups. But the interesting thing about strategic theft, and we actually did a podcast with Scott Cornell of Travelers Insurance the last time, specifically talking about strategic theft, is this crime really has evolved into really just internationally based. It touches a lot of different people. It touches a lot of different companies. And it really has taken on a nuance. And, we'll start with Mark. From a cargo theft challenge standpoint, Mark, what are you seeing in not only Greater Toronto, but also Greater Canada?
Yeah, well, I can definitely speak to the region of Peel specifically. We have one of the most robust logistics sectors in all of Canada. We have close to 175,000 registered businesses. And, obviously, with the amount of cargo running through our region, we have an international airport. We have access to 2 major railways, very incredibly intricate interstate system, 5 major interstates that go through our region. And there's an estimated $8 billion in cargo going through or originating in Peel every day. So obviously, the logistics sector is very integral to the pillar of our industrial area, specifically in Peel where I work. We have seen last year, 2024, we did see an uptick of about 29% in cargo thefts, which was interesting because the year previous we had actually seen a substantial drop in 2023. But a lot of this had to do with a shift of organized crime groups to auto theft, which was running rampant.
And I'll pose the same question for you, Mike. It was interesting when ISCPO had their summit in London when we actually met, and hearing different speakers from places like the Netherlands, from Germany, from France, from Italy. And it was amazing to hear their stories of how cargo crime is evolving, very similar to the United States. So similar to what Mark had just mentioned, what are some of the challenges you're seeing right now from crimes throughout the UK?
Thanks, Glenn. I'm a police officer and I work for the National Vehicle Crime Intelligence Service here in the UK. We see ourselves as being the bridge between policing and industry, but we're quite unique in the UK in that the work that we're doing around UK cargo theft is entirely funded by business and industry. So we don't receive any government central funding. And we've spent the last 7 years more accurately mapping the threat from UK cargo crime. We're just putting our annual figures together for 2024, and our annual report will be out later in February. But early indications are that we received 4,800 notifications of all types of UK road-related freight crime and cargo theft during 2024. That came to an estimated combined cost price loss value, and this is cost price loss value of £100 million. through the work that we're doing with the cargo insurers in the City of London, there's a train of thought that suggests that those figures, particularly around the loss figures, that the true value could be somewhere as much as 700 million per year sterling to the UK in real term costs. As I said, we're a police unit that has been undertaking this piece of work. There's an awful lot of good work that's going on in the UK around cargo theft. Last year, we supported 48 policing operations. We was either notified or asked for assistance with 367 arrests for UK cargo theft. But there's a number of organised crime groups in the UK that are deliberately targeting road-related freight and cargo. The majority of thefts that we see in the UK involve slashes on curtains, on the canvas curtains on trucks, bolt croppings of trailer doors to remove serious volumes of cargo. We also see fictitious collections, identity theft. We saw a run on distribution companies before Christmas around phishing attacks. Something that we see, which is another threat, is around moving cargo thefts or rollover thefts. So high-speed thefts from lorries travelling at 100 kilometres an hour that are entered en route to delivery whilst in motion. We saw 16 of those incidents during 2024, but we also see another threat, which is around seal compromise. So the organised crime groups will break into trucks and trailers, remove or pilfer smaller quantities of goods, and then reseal those containers or trailers. And then it's only known at the end when the piece count's done that obviously that load is light on its load. So there's some of the threats that we're seeing in the UK.
So I'll ask Mark this. It was pretty interesting in looking back at the ISCPO summit and hearing your presentation. And one of the things that really stuck with me was the problems with the laws keeping up with cargo theft. I mean, as you know, as we just have been talking about, cargo theft and the trends, the criminals are continuously changing their methodologies of how cargo is being stolen, right? And not only obviously in the United States, but both in Canada and the UK as well. But Mark, you had made a point of how laws are not keeping up with the actual crime itself. And a lot of times legislators don't necessarily understand the crime. I know here in the United States, we're facing the same problem, that we're doing everything from a public-private sector with law enforcement from an investigation standpoint, but to actually have district attorneys, legislators really grasp and understand cargo theft in a nutshell has been difficult for us. Can you share with the audience some of the things that you're seeing in Canada as it relates to laws and legislation around cargo theft?
And I agree with what you're saying, Glenn. We're finding the rate of recidivism is astronomical. I've been doing this for 5 years in the cargo theft area. We run a commercial auto crime unit that looks after not only cargo theft, but heavy equipment and auto theft as well. But in the cargo theft section, we are constantly dealing with the same repeat offenders over and over again to catch and release. For them, it's very low risk, high reward. They're getting 30 cents on the dollar for some of these loads. If they're stealing $1 million load, they're making 30 cents on the dollar. We've tried to push our best foot forward in getting legislation changed, speaking with the right people. There is some impact now, especially with the fact that we've had such an issue in the last couple of years with auto theft. It almost goes hand in hand with cargo theft. And, so we're seeing a little bit of change politically. There's been some pressure put on the judiciary and our legislative bodies to change the wordings in our criminal code. There has been as of last year, there's been new verbiage put in our criminal code regarding auto theft. And we're hoping that's going to translate over into cargo theft as well, because it's be quite honest, they're not seeing, and it's an incredibly expensive endeavor for Canadian businesses. There's estimates in the last 5 years it's cost retailers close to $5 billion in losses. So when you start looking at somebody stealing $1 million load and getting the same type of signs they get for stealing a $5,000 car, and in Canada, that's what they charge you in theft over $5,000. It just doesn't translate. There's something being lost here. So yeah, there's a lot of work being put in right now by our police agencies to put some sort of pressure on the political aspect to have those changes made in the criminal code.
Mike, I'll pose the same question for you. Are you seeing the same challenges from legislation and laws around cargo theft that would actually make an impact in the UK?
Absolutely. I think we're all talking the same language here. At present, we are working with a trade association, the Road Haulage Association in the UK, around cargo theft. We welcome the new cargo crime strategy that was unveiled in London just before Christmas. As Mark rightly says, cargo crime in the UK is seen as being low risk and high reward for the criminals if they can pull it off. When I joined the police 20-something years ago, criminals were still holding up post offices and committing serious crimes such as armed robbery. Crime is constantly evolving, and it's evolving in the UK, and cargo theft is seen as being one of those low risk, high reward crime types. As I mentioned, we're working with the Road Haulage Association and the UK government in relation to a Home Office crime classification code or Home Office counting code. So that is basically, at present, there is no counting code or Home Office code, government code for a cargo theft. The Road Haulage Association are also in talks with the government in relation to stricter sentencing guidelines for cargo theft. So I mentioned that 367 arrests last year for UK cargo theft. However, prosecution rates and clear-up rates, as Mark said, is the same in Canada, are low in the UK. We've also got the Road Haulage Association asking government in the UK for more finance in order for us to combat UK cargo theft. We've also been working with UK government around the acute lack of secure truck parking in the UK. We've given advice around the TAPA secure truck parking standards. The British Parking Association, we assisted with putting together a secure truck parking standard, which is called Park Mark Freight. But these are all initiatives that have only really come to the fore in the last 12 to 18 months.
You know, it's interesting hearing these different stories, and I could tell, from a practitioner standpoint, it's really over the past couple of years where businesses have taken the initiative here in the United States really to collaborate with one another and conduct almost joint investigations into cargo theft. A lot of the things that we've been seeing, obviously, not only a challenge from the legality standpoint, but you've got these crews that are working in multiple municipalities throughout the state. They could be traveling the state. And you've got maybe at sometimes 5 to 10 different law enforcement agencies all investigating one-off crimes, and nobody's collaborating or understanding that it's actually the same crew. It's actually the practitioners, through their collaboration and work in an investigation, that are bringing forth the information to law enforcement that the same crew that may be hitting these different companies in Oakland and San Francisco are also now working their way through Los Angeles. So then at that point, it's how do we throw out a broader net, get the state police involved, and most recently now from a federal law enforcement standpoint. In the United States, A lot of the investigations have been driven not only by the businesses, but they've also been driven at the state level, the municipal level, through the police, not necessarily at the federal level, such as with law enforcement agencies such as the FBI. I just recently attended in December the U.S. Chamber of Commerce held a roundtable discussion with law enforcement, with security practitioners in the supply chain, talking about the challenges, the ever-evolving crimes that are occurring, and how best that the federal government now can get involved, which is kind of interesting. We've got, for the first time, we're seeing bipartisan leadership. Representatives, congressmen on both the Republican side and the Democratic side coming together in states that have very high cargo theft, and actually looking to put forth legislation in the next 4 years to potentially aid states through investigation and other legislative avenues. So it's kind of interesting to see how both the public and private sector are coming together, very similar to what's occurring in both the UK and Canada. And I think, frankly, it's going to take an effort with all of us in both public and private sector and lawmakers to really get cargo theft on the forefront, because as both you gentlemen have mentioned, it's a low risk and it's a high reward. And what we've seen in the States is you've got these crews that are continuously committing the same crimes over and over and over again. In some instances, they are getting arrested, and they're out on the street within 72 hours, and the next day they're back at it. So it's pretty interesting. I will pivot and I'll ask Mark, obviously with your lengthy experience, what has been kind of, especially the most recently, what has really stood out to you as far as an investigation that really comes to mind that really had a major impact, especially through media in Canada?
Well, first of all, I've got to commend my American counterparts. The fact that you're able to hold somebody in for 72 hours is incredible. Our guys are usually out within the same day, if not the next morning. So kudos to you guys who have our legislation and our judiciaries look at what you guys are doing. But, to your point, and again, to Mike's point as well, when you talk about the recidivism and the crews doing things over and over again, we've had one recently where, it's touched all three areas we're talking about here, the UK, Canada, and States. I know Michael had made a mention of rollovers, and we saw that for the first time in Canada here last year by a group. And you have to be careful how you put this, but let's just say they weren't a Canadian group. They were brought over from Europe, from Romania, as a matter of fact. And I think this is a commonplace, Mike, maybe you can speak to it as well, but it's called the Romanian rollover, where they actually spent quite a bit of time in surveillance on the company they were looking at. And it was high-end electronics. They were able to determine a kind of a schedule on which the electronics were taken from the distribution center. That was a high-value load, cell phones. They were able to find out what the truck number was and followed it for several days until they got to a point where they were able to place a vehicle in front of the truck to get it to slow down. They were able to access the back of it. And then en route, and like Michael said, at over 100 kilometers an hour or 60 miles an hour, they were in the back of the trailer pilfering the load. When they got close to their destination, they were able to stop the vehicle again with putting marked a car that looked like it had an engine or two, had the hood up, and stopped, and two or three other cars went back, and they offloaded close to $2 million worth of goods. So we were lucky that, working with a very good company that put a lot of effort into their security and actually had excellent loss prevention people put the work in and work with police. We were able to determine through our investigation, working with other agencies that were adjacent to us to identify that group. We were able to then do 6 warrants. We were able to locate all of these individuals, and they were all arrested. Of course, unfortunately, Canada here, they were released all within the day or the next day. So over to you, Glenn, because the last thing we had heard is they'd gone through Saskatchewan and crossed the border into the U.S. So be on the lookout for that. That's coming your way. But that one made the news. We've also been very comfortable in saying that our investigators here are some of the top-notch ones. We deal with a lot of partner agencies with York Regional Police, especially. They also are one of the only dedicated cargo theft units in Canada, and our friends at Toronto Police Service as well. So we did a joint forces operation with several of the police forces, including our Ontario Provincial Police, called Project Big Rig. That was incredibly successful, with $3 million worth of, or close to $3 million worth of cargo being recovered, 28 loads, and 27 tractors and trailers. That garnered a lot of media. It also was international because, as I said, we do have a large, robust logistics sector here, and it's predominantly run by the South Asian community. Unfortunately, there is a vulnerable part of that community with drug addicts, students that are over here on student visas, and they basically extort these individuals to do these thefts for them, and basically will threaten their families here or abroad, or keep them high by supplying them with heroin. So Project Big Rig identified 15 of these individuals. Most of them were not Canadian citizens who were here either illegally or here on visas. One of the problems we have with Canadian legislation is we can't extradite these individuals or get them out of the country unless they have a registered conviction. If they are here on an immigration status of some sort or in the process, they have to have a registered conviction before we can get them out of the country. And that seems to be an issue as well, because it takes upwards of 2 years sometimes to get them before they're deported.
Very interesting. Mike, anything in 2023, 2024 that really stands out in the UK?
There's a couple of investigations that I would say that are our key investigations over the last couple of years. 2 years ago, we got asked to assist our colleagues in Birmingham in relation to a team of individuals that were committing trailer hookup thefts on weekend nights at distribution centres across the UK. We assisted that particular investigation. It led to quite lengthy prison sentences. So one individual was sentenced to 6 years in prison. A second individual got 4 years in prison. And then there was a third individual as part of that got a 3-year prison sentence, which are all good prison sentences, and a lot of hard work went into that. But I'd rather speak around something to show the seriously well-organised aspect in the form of probably the biggest recovery that I've been involved with whilst I've been in this role. So back in 2021, I got a call from detectives near Leeds, and those detectives said that they thought that they'd found 2 warehouses that contained an awful lot of suspicious or dubious goods. We got drafted in as subject matter experts to do the provenance checks on those goods. When I went into the second unit particularly, I know that Glenn, you deal with high volumes of cargo, but the police were in these 2 units for 3 weeks, and they palletized between 500 and 600 pallets of goods. I was given a week to identify as much as I could. And when I got to 20 lorry loads of stolen goods, that's when we handed it back over to them. There was cargoes that had been stolen 5 years before in UK cargo thefts. I had to take advice from subject matter experts in America in relation to that particular investigation, because I wasn't sure why those goods would still be there 5 years after the theft. And what I got told was, in America, it's termed as lagging, and lagging means that the criminals are so prolific in the stealing that they will steal the goods. They will sit on those goods while they tend to wait for the heat from law enforcement to die down, or the buyer of those goods may have fallen through. And then because they're that prolific with the stealing of cargo, they just carry on stealing, and those goods get put to one side. So that is probably the most interesting one. The goods were probably valued somewhere around probably about $5 million, probably $7 million, probably in total from that recovery. So without doubt, that's our biggest recovery that we've been involved with in the last couple of years.
You know, Mark, one of the things that you mentioned in the last caper is the capabilities in the private sector as far as having a very robust security program. You know, one of the things that the ISCPO has really prided itself on, especially with our preferred vendor program, is to partner with solution providers, not only domestically but internationally, who really are experts within their own vertical. And it's kind of unique because our solution providers are continuously collaborating, networking with us at our summits, both public and private sector, to understand the challenges that both law enforcement and asset protection practitioners face, and being able to pivot around that. Now, obviously, you know, the days of utilizing technology, especially like GPS devices, you know, from 5-10 years ago that were the size of a brick and had lousy recording, now with the help of satellites and technological advances, the solution providers are really, what we're seeing from a private sector standpoint, they're really making an impact to help with investigations. Can you speak at all regarding any recommendations you may have for private sector and some technologies that should be used?
Yeah, 100%. I would say that, you know, investing in a robust system to ensure that your loss prevention is mitigated is very important. Now, I do understand that not everybody has the capabilities of spending $1 million or some of that neighborhood on a security system, but there are techniques and technology out there that can definitely help with the mitigation of loss prevention. I mean, they've got it down with GPS trackers now, where you can install small devices in corrugated cardboard that won't be found, because let's be honest, most of these criminal organizations are up to speed on what's going on with technology as well, and they have counter technology to find GPS indicators. But there's all sorts of stuff. One of the very basic points I tell people is know your people. That's an incredibly important aspect of making sure that your boats get to their locations. We get a lot of theft here in Canada from the actual DCs. We get a lot of fictitious pickups, and it could be, you know, something as simple as asking for the driver's license and having to get out of the vehicle so they're in front of that camera so we can actually see their face. It gives us a little step up on them when we're doing the investigation if something does go missing, because it's sometimes we're getting. I think I spoke about this, Glenn, at my presentation for you guys, that we sometimes still get VHS recordings from some of this old closed circuit television stuff, and it's like the background behind you as grainy as that. So it's very difficult, but yeah, the technology is there. I know there's a company, and I don't advocate for any particular company, but a company by the name of Zedcore that does a very good job with using AI and cameras, and their cameras are excellent. And it's a mobile unit, so it can go anywhere. If you've got a larger company, you've got a particular area you're finding is an issue, it's being used a lot. This camera can be moved to several different locations. It's 24-hour monitoring. It's not just, you know, a security company saying, yeah, we're 24-hour security, but they show up maybe once or twice a night. This camera actually uses AI, and it also uses, you know, a real live person looking at the camera as well. So stuff like that is available out there, and any sort of devices you can use on the trailers themselves. The locking mechanisms are getting very good out there. They're getting very hard to defeat. Mind you, it's like anything. It's like stolen autos. I tell people this: if they want your product, they're going to get your product. But it's a matter of being able to track it and know it's in that. I say that it's also take the time to understand what the issues are, then you can at least try to mitigate those issues. Education, cooperation amongst agencies. We work very well hand in hand with all of our community partners, as well as our police partners. So we're North America. Use TAPA before, we've used the Southwest Transportation Security Council. We use ISCPO quite a bit. They're all excellent connections to have. And when you need to know something, I'm always available. My cell phone's out there. You just got to Google my name, you can find it. I'm the poster child for a lot of cargo theft and auto theft up here in Canada. So not that I'm happy about that, because my wife finds that my phone rings at all hours of the day. So, but yeah, I say education and communication amongst agencies is key.
Well, I want to thank both you gentlemen for taking the time out. I think this discussion really is going to continue, especially throughout 2025, 2026. As we mentioned when we opened up, the criminals are ever evolving, and folks in law enforcement and security practitioners throughout the United States, Canada, and UK, we have to be ever evolving. But I think where our biggest impact is going to be made is through organizations such as ISCPO, such as TAPA, any place where you can network and collaborate and share different ideas. One of the things that I will share is the ISCPO. We're going to have a second summit in London. I think date is to be determined in October, and then November as well. And this will actually be our third Toronto summit for Greater Canada. And it's great being able to meet obviously practitioners and members of law enforcement and share these different thoughts and ideas, because I think it just really generates organic conversation on how collectively we're going to not only educate people, but we're going to come up with ideas and working with solution providers such as the preferred partners at ISCPO to be able to make a difference and combat the continued theft. So I want to thank both of you, and looking forward to seeing both of you guys in the fall at the ISCPO summits.
Yeah, I'd like to go to London.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much, and keep up the good work.